Hey folks, welcome back to Dig Drive DIY. In today's video, I've got two things to talk about. First of all, many of you saw in the last couple of weeks, we got a new outdoor wood stove. It's a Crown Royal 7400E Pristine Series, and you watched Keith and I install it, and then we talked about how it worked, and hopefully how we're gonna burn less wood this year. But I left out some important stuff. I take it for granted that commenters or viewers don't always know how the entire system works. How does the heat get from the stove to our house or to my barn? And well, people wondered, why don't we just burn propane? So there's a lot of questions that I left unanswered. I've covered them before, but for new viewers, they might not know. So we're going to go over some details of how our entire heating system works with an outdoor wood stove. And the second part of this video involves the backhoe and doing something I haven't done in quite a while. We're going to dig out some stumps for a neighbor just down the road here. So those things don't sound like they're necessarily related, but if you watch until the end of the video, it'll all make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to jump in the backhoe. We're going to go down there and start working on those stumps. And in the middle of it, I'll talk a little bit about our outdoor wood stove and our heating system. So, all right, stick around.
Dig Drive DIY.
For longtime viewers of this channel, you might remember a stump removal I did with the backhoe for my cousin Tony. It was almost 5 years ago now, and that video got a lot of views. It was a great video for the early days of my channel. But removing stumps with a backhoe for whatever reason sparks a lot of controversy. Or not controversy so much as debate. There's debate in the comments. The first thing people always say is, why don't you just use a stump grinder? A lot of them will say, you know, I would have cut that differently or pushed it over with the tree still standing. It would have been so much easier. And the third thing they always say is, you're going to destroy your backhoe. This is a dumb thing to be doing. Well, some of those ideas might be true, and I will discuss all that as we get over there and start digging on them. But for now, I'm just trying to get things greased up, ready to go, and we'll move over there and I'll show you what we're dealing with. So for today's project, we're just going 1.5 miles down the road to a neighbor named Jeff. Now, again, if you're an astute viewer of this channel, you might have seen Jeff show up in a previous video. When we were digging the pond, the GMC General dump truck that I had got a flat front tire, and it happened right in front of Jeff's house. Jeff came out and helped my dad and I change the tire on that day, and I was forever grateful for that. But we're not worried about any tires today. Jeff's got these 3 stumps. Actually, I stopped down there to talk to him, and maybe if I do these 3 stumps, we can work out a trade. We'll get to that later, but the reason he needs the 3 stumps removed is because he wants to build a barn kind of nestled in the woods here, and in order to do that, he's got to get these stumps out of the way first, and that's where I and the backhoe come in. All right, here are the 3 stumps in question. We've got this little clustered stump right here. We've got one that Jeff looks like he's been working on burning, and then got this little guy here. I don't think these are going to be too bad. Sometimes when the stumps are in the woods, they don't put up as much of a fight as what they do in a yard for whatever reason. So neighbor Jeff is planning to build a building right here, and so these 3 have got to go because this is where he wants it. It'll be tucked up into the woods here. This is a beautiful property. I love homes that are tucked up in the woods. Yeah, I wish I'd have started out in the woods. But anyway, he's going to have a great place here. We're going to get them dug out, and then we'll get started on these, and then we'll talk about the stove a little bit, and then I'll also talk about those talking points, what people are going to be talking about in the comments as we get into this. I think I'm going to go ahead and start on this one with the fire ring around it. So on any of these stumps, whether they're big or small, I'm going to dig around all 4 sides to try to get all the roots busted up to get them out of there. We're going to have to get rid of this little ring here first. Kind of backhoe challenge here. So I've got the 1-foot bucket on. You know, the 1-foot bucket is obviously much narrower. Kind of helps with the amount of torque that you get on the bucket itself. Okay, the idea is here, especially on stumps, digging them out with a backhoe or a mini excavator, something that's, you know, you have to be patient with. That's the main key, is you have to be patient. I don't have as much power and strength, as a large excavator. The only alternative is to take your time and take smaller bites. Now I'm nibbling through these roots just like that. That's nibbling through the roots, and I'm basically cutting them as I go. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna section around this thing on all four sides so that I get all the main roots cut, and that'll help to let go and come out. But when I did the last big stump with a backhoe, like I said, there was a bunch of conflict or controversy in the comments. One of the things people said was, it'd be so much easier if you left the tree standing and push it over with the backhoe. All right, there is some truth to that. You could dig around the base and then try to push it over with the backhoe. You're gaining a little bit of leverage from being able to push. You just run the risk of something going wrong and something falling on the machine. I don't like it. And for what you gain in leverage, it's really not that much on a machine that's not big enough to do it. Other people say, well, I would have cut the tree off 10 foot above the ground or 5 feet above the ground, so you had a little bit of a stump sticking up to push on and use that for leverage. Well, my answer to that is, how in the world are you going to cut a tree off 5 feet off the ground or 10 feet off the ground? Am I going to go up on a step ladder and try to cut it down? That seems incredibly unsafe as well. So to me, that is not an option. So on these, it's really not that much extra effort. You about have to do the same amount of digging, whether you do this and just get the stump out, or whether you dig around it and try to push it over. Another thing that people like to say when you dig out a stump like this with a machine is that, why didn't you just grind it out? Or from the guys that grind stumps, they like to say, I would have ground that out in 15 minutes. You spent an hour on that. I could have done it in 15 minutes. Well, yes, you can grind the stump out in 15 minutes, but then you still got to clean up all the wood chips. You got to deal with the hole that's left behind in some degree. And in a situation like this, or for my cousin Tony when I did his, they're going to build a barn right here. So a stump grinder does a good job, but it only goes so deep. You can't get all of the stump. You can't get the bulk of the main stump. I know you're not going to get all the limbs either, and I'm not as well, but I am going to get the bulk of the main stump. And if you're going to build a building over the top of something, you don't want to have just a ground up top of a stump where the rest of it can rot over time and create a void under your building. Have a little check here. Got this side dug, this side dug. You can see all those roots there. I'm working on this side. There's a big guy. So this side to finish, one more side to go. All right, here is our last of the 4 sides we need to dig out. I don't think this stump is going to be too bad. But another thing that people comment about, they say that you're going to destroy your backhoe digging stumps like that. That is just too hard on it. Well, I could see that point for sure. This is not the best thing on a backhoe. You're doing a lot of prying and pulling, and it could be easy to bend something. It's probably easy to break something. You're not putting really any more strain on the hydraulics because you got relief valves that override the pressure when you exceed what it can do. So that's not an issue with the hydraulics, but it does jar the backhoe around quite a bit and make it shake and bounce. But you know what? The best way to keep a backhoe or any piece of equipment from getting damaged or causing wear and tear is to not use it at all. That has not been the case with this backhoe. This backhoe currently has about 9,200 hours on it. So for 9,200 hours, it has put up with all kinds of abuse. I got it at about 7,000, somewhere in there. So I put over 2,000 hours on it, doing whatever I want. And I've never really restricted what I do based on how it might hurt or damage the backhoe. If I got work to do with it, I do the work and deal with the consequences. So if it breaks down, it breaks and we fix it. But so far, like I said, if you're patient and you're careful and you're slow and methodical, you can do this and you can do a fair amount of it and not tear up the backhoe. Now, if you made this its job every day, all day long, that's probably a different story. But on the same token, if you were going to do that, you would want to have a different tool, you'd want to have a tooth. And that's another thing that people said, why don't you just get a single tooth to rip out stumps? And that would be great if I wanted to invest that kind of money. You know, the last stump I dug was for Tony 4 or 5 years ago. So to invest a couple grand into a tooth and use it one time in 4 or 5 years doesn't seem like a very smart move either. So I'm using the 1 foot bucket. It's not perfect, but it's better than a 2 or 3 foot bucket. It'll get there. All right, well, some people might think that this is the dumbest way to remove a stump, but we got one out in about 35 minutes. So 35 minutes isn't bad for one stump. We got 2 more to go, but I don't want to bore you with doing the same thing multiple times. So while I start cleaning this up, I'm gonna pick up all the woody debris that I can find and kind of kick it off to the side, and then I'll push the hole shut. Then I'll start working on those other stumps, and I'll show you some of that. But while I get to going on that, I'm going to show you what I didn't show you about our wood stove. So the new Crown Royal, it's a Pristine Series gasification boiler. We burn the fire outside next to a little lean-to I've got where we stack the wood. So naturally, some people that are new to the channel wondered, how in the world does a wood stove that sits out in the middle of your driveway heat your house that's way over there, and your barn that's way over there, and your garage, etc. The stove is surrounded with water. It's got a water jacket or a water tank that surrounds the fire inside. So that's the medium by which the heat is transferred from out here to the various buildings. It's hot water, just like a boiler system in a home or a boiler system in an apartment building. This is a boiler that heats water, and it's gonna send it to the house, to the garage, and to the shop. And we've got a couple different systems on how it's delivered. But I made a video a couple years ago on how it all works, so I thought I would take a few excerpts from that video and put them in here to kind of explain it and show you what I'm talking about. The fire heats up the water to about 175 degrees Fahrenheit, and then the hot water is pumped from the stove to the house through special insulated pipes that help keep it hot while it makes the journey underground across the yard and up through the basement floor. The water from the stove comes up through that pipe in the floor. Those are the boiler lines that come. And then the hot water goes here and goes across through that bow that needs to be held up. And it goes into the heat exchanger on this side. And then it flows through the heat exchanger like a radiator and comes out this side here. And here's my vent that I can purge air out of the line with that vent if I need to. But the cold air returns. We added our attached garage in 2008, and since we had a wood boiler that was capable of handling a bit more square footage, we decided to go with a hydronic radiant heating system in the floor. My wife and I once again saved money by installing all of the insulation and PEX plumbing ourselves, and then we had the pros pour the concrete, and my plumber cousin Jason hooked everything up for us. Just like he did the forced air HVAC system in the house too. And before it goes back to the boiler, it actually comes through here, and then it goes over to the garage. It comes around here, goes through a mixing valve. This mixing valve regulates the temperature of the water that goes through the floor of the garage, and then a pump takes that water and pumps it through the PEX lines up through the garage. And it goes all the way through the garage floor, and then comes back from this line here, and the water is cooled off and cold. Part of the cold water comes back and mixes with the hot water coming from the return line from the heat exchanger in the furnace. And we don't want that water to be too hot that's going through the floor of the garage. So that's how it gets mixed. Cold water comes back here, flows from right here, and then goes back to the stove. And it's pretty cold going back to the stove. The boiler had been working great for 5 years or so now, with the house always nice and toasty and the radiant floor heat in the garage being a fantastic luxury. We liked the full-time heated garage so much, and I was now spoiled to the point that when I decided to build my 36 by 56 workshop in 2013, I knew I'd want the heat on all winter long. Instead of digging up the entire yard and driveway, I hired a directional boring crew to come out and bore the new boiler lines from the stove to the shop. While it was a little bit more costly, having that line board was certainly a great decision. It was much less mess to clean up, and we used fewer feet of boiler pipe by making a straight shot and going directly underneath our existing barn to the shop. So the heat is distributed to the shop by this heat exchanger and fan unit that I got for free from my father-in-law. It works pretty well, and it can keep the shop between 50 to 60 degrees most of the winter, except for the coldest of windy days where it might start to slip a bit. And the biggest drawback to this is it's noisy and the fan runs really fast, so you get a little turbulence. Well, hopefully that makes sense. Hot water is piped underground to all the buildings that we're going to heat, and then there's different methods for extracting that heat from the hot water, whether it's a heat exchanger that blows air across a radiator essentially, or it's hot water pipes that are buried in the concrete and they heat up, use a big thermal mass to heat the building, such as the garage. So anyway, we'll go back over and try to finish up on those stumps, and then I'll tell you the reason why the stumps have something to do with the stove. All right, this guy is wiggling. It's getting close. Didn't take much. It's got a little 3-foot sticking up. Can I use that for leverage? Oh, there we go. Came right out. Wasn't bad. This is a junk tree. Alright, well that didn't go too bad. Those stumps came out pretty easy. Wasn't that hard on the backhoe, and like I said, sometimes in the woods they just seem to come out easier for whatever reason. But I guess I forgot to tell you while I was there, and I forgot to show you that the whole reason I stopped in at Jeff's place to talk to him was because he sells something that I'm interested in buying. And when he told me that he needed a few stumps dug out, I thought maybe we could trade. Jeff just happens to cut and sell firewood, believe it or not. And I happen to be in need of some dry firewood, and he's got it. He's got a lot of it, as a matter of fact. So now that I'm done with those stumps, Jeff's gonna deliver a few loads to me. We're gonna trade on some of it for the stumps I dug out, and I'm gonna buy 3 or 4 cords from him for this winter to get me going. And that should work out really good. I'm gonna get some dry firewood for the new stove. He got his stumps dug out, and we're gonna be all set. But that guy makes a lot of firewood, and it's just really impressive, the piles that he's got going there. So if you're local and you need some firewood, I can hook you up with somebody. Otherwise, I'm gonna run this back home, and then I'll join back up with you as soon as Jeff is here with that first load of wood. How's it going?
Good.
I don't know if we want to open the...
I was going to open it up once we got back to let it fall out.
Okay.
Then probably pull back out, open them up.
And then back in? It's probably good. You said 1/4 and 1/3, or how much did you get on there?
This is over 1/4.
Get the girls out here and help me stack. All right, well, we'll be in touch then.
All right, let me know.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. See ya. All right, so for the astute viewers, longtime viewers of the channel that recognize the fact that I wasn't gonna have enough firewood ready for this year, you were right. But I did have a plan in place. I had always hoped that I could rely on this resource just down the road from me. And when I stopped down there and Jeff said he needed stumps taken out, I thought, what a perfect situation. We can work out a trade, and I'm gonna owe him a little bit because I'm gonna get more wood than what he got in stump removal value. But nevertheless, it's great to just give a neighbor the business. I've got some 1-year seasoned wood that'll hopefully burn up no problem. Get this stacked in, and then we'll see how this works out. But hopefully you've got an idea of what goes into a stump removal. You've got a better idea of how our entire heating system works with the house and the garage and the shop. Obviously you can see what I'm planning on for dry wood this year, and then everything that I cut from now moving forward will be wood for me in the following years. So this is my way to get ahead. I hope it works. What I do know is I'm very grateful for you being here. Thanks so much for clicking on this video. Hope that you liked it, and if I'm lucky, I will see you in the next one. Take care.